But George, about on that point exactly, you know, kind of striking, you read in the 24 hours after this that this a very similar incident happened in China. A man in an elementary school with a knife, not an assault weapon, almost 24 kids injured but not killed.
In 1996, a man went into a gym class in Scotland, killed 16 5- and 6-year-olds and the teacher. A few years ago in Norway, a young, deranged young man killed, 69 people on an island, mostly teenagers. Connecticut has among the toughest gun laws in this country. Didn't help. Scotland and Norway have very tough gun laws. Didn't help. So
didn't stop, but it does lessen the occasion of violence, doesn't it?
And
yes,
George, since Columbine, there have been 181 of these school shootings.
We did have a ban on assault weapons. When we put the ban in place, these incidents did not really decline in a measurable way, and when we took it off, they didn't increase in a measurable way.
There were 5 guns in that house. The shooter chose 2 semi-automatic pistols and 1 semi-automatic rifle. He did not choose the 2 deer hunting rifles. It seems to me that the Congresswoman is absolutely right. There is a bright line here that we should be able to, to hunt, hunters should be able to go about their sport, but there's no need to hunt with a semi-automatic rifle. There's none.
Congressman?
Well, look, I'm a concealed carry permit holder. I own a Glock 23. I've got a shotgun. I'm not the person you need to worry about, and there are millions of Americans who deal with this properly. It's our Second Amendment right to do so. But we have to look at the mental health access
so is there a that Second these people Amendment right have.
To
any kind of weapon, any capacity?
No, there are
weapon?
prohibitions on lots of... The gun rules are very stringent. There's a lot of conjecture out there that I don't think necessarily would solve this particular problem. And I want to look at anything that we think will solve all the problems, but we have to, I think, look at the mental health aspect.
We do have to look at the mental health aspect, but the complex problems require complex solutions, and it isn't one thing. It's all of these things. And some people would like to deflect the conversation only to the mental health problems that are severe and that we need to deal with without dealing with the reality that we have a lot of weapons out there and people have access to them, and we have to figure out a way that we can protect our children in their kindergarten and first grade classrooms.
I want to bring up as well, how do we talk about this in a way that doesn't encourage the contagion?
I don't know that the news coverage that I've seen is glamorizing the killer as much as allowing the rest of the country to grieve. As a parent, we all shed a tear. I do agree with Joe that you put violence and death and gore in a movie, you're not going to get an R rating. You do something else, okay, but I got to tell you, I think the movie ratings are terribly misleading when it comes to violence, death, gore, and glamorizing.
And all of those things are true because we do have a culture that celebrates violence, but it doesn't take away our responsibility. And I want to urge and challenge my colleague to work with me, to work with us on this so that no parent has to experience what these parents and families do in Newtown. The bright lines between those who are hunters and shooters and outdoors people, but they don't need an assault rifle. They don't need high-capacity magazines that create havoc and viciousness and death. And we can do that. Background checks, we can do that. We can close that up, and then we allow ourselves to enjoy the Second Amendment rights that are so important, but also we respect human life.
The question is what to do and what is possible to do.
Well, we got to bring in Mayor Rahm Emanuel of Chicago. Chicago's in an epidemic of violence with young, largely unparented, that is, no father in the home, adolescent males. Now, that's a problem quite separate from this. Another thing that we're going to do, and it makes one's heart sink, is this, George. We're going to ratchet up the security of schools and elsewhere in public spaces. Our public spaces are already blighted by this. For generations, people have been using the water on the mall to run little sailing boats. Now the government, in its wisdom, has banned remote control little boats on the Mall water in Washington because it somehow represents a security threat to the country. We have to be a little bit reasonable unless we surround our citizenry with the quite false idea that this is an extremely dangerous country.
And on that point,